everyone, how's it going? My name is Leo, also known as Knockdeaf, and in this Piloto Studio video, we're going to be making a really cool decal-esque snow swirling shader. This is perfect for your snow scenes. Essentially, whenever there's kind of heavy snow, it kind of drifts and swirls around the ground. There's some footage here. This is actual real-life footage of how snow usually swirls on pavement and reacts to the wind. Now, many games usually don't really try to replicate this effect, or if they do it 100% flat, but I think we can get away with actually raising the geometry a little bit. It's, in concept, truthfully speaking, a very simple concept, but still a cool one nonetheless. And the devil, as always, lies on the details. So this video is going to teach you how I achieved this effect that was captured on Unity, and we are using the Amplify Shader Editor, as always. If you know your way around shader editors, you don't need Amplify. You can do this just as easily on ShaderGraph, but of course, you know, some nodes, they differ in name. But this tutorial is really great. I explain along my thought process behind every decision, and yeah, so let's jump right into the engine. Alrighty folks, so this is the final result. You can see here this effect. We are on a pretty icy, snowy environment, but please ignore it. The focus of the effect of this tutorial is this effect right here. You can see here a couple of these elements. So it is white additive panning through. Also, you can see that there's actual geometry moving up, so it does work from side view. And also, the edges are faded out, and the way we did this is with a simple mask. Also, if I take this here and I move it, you can see here how it fades. It doesn't end abruptly. It has a little bit of a fade here on geometry intersection. And we are using Unity 2021 URP, but of course, as with most things, the knowledge here in this video is version agnostic, so you can remake this shader on any Unity version you wish. So we are going to be using Amplify, so let's create here a new shader. Let's make it unlit, and let's call it Tutorial Snow. Great. Here we have the shader tab, and let's make some boilerplate code stuff here. So the very first thing is that from shader type, we want to go universal and unlit. After all, it is an unlit shader. From opaque, we want to go to transparent, and we want to keep it on alpha. We can make it two-sided. I personally think it's a nice practice, but it's your call. You can disable cast shadows, and you can also disable receive shadows if you wish. In my case, I'm going to leave it on. We're going to be using tessellation here. We want edge length coal, and on the settings here we can keep them like this because we can change them on the material later, but the vertex position needs to be absolute, otherwise your model is going to poof out, it's going to expand, get bigger, and we don't want that. And I believe those are all of the settings. If I remember anything else, we can go back to it. So the idea here is that we're going to be taking textures and we're going to be panning them across, and those textures are also going to raise up the actual geometry. So the idea here is that we're going to take textures and we're going to actually move them across the plane, and as they move based on their brightness, we're going to poof them up with the actual vertices. So this means we're going to get a little bit of vertex position offsets here going. So let's begin. So the very first thing we need, of course, is a snowy texture. So let's get a texture sample node, and we want to manipulate the UVs of these textures in particular. In my case, I'm using two textures. So we're going to have a snow noise 1, and we are going to have a snow noise 2. Great. So now we're going to pan them, but we're going to pan them a little bit differently because we want those textures to have different types of offsets. One of my pro tips here is that you can hold U and click, and you're going to get yourself a texture coordinate. You can hook it up here to the UV, right? But the thing is, on this one, Amplify has this thing that's called references. I can say that this texture coordinate follows the reference for Snow Noise 2, and we're going to use this one for this one, and we can make a new one, and on the reference we can say Snow Noise 1. And now the tiling and offset is going to be controlled on the material automatically. This is very, very useful. Let's make a panner here. We're going to hook up this panner here with our texture coordinate. And what we're going to do is that we need to control the speed of this panner. So what we can do here, we can actually take a vector 2, we can promote it to a variable, and we're going to call this noise speed. Here I think I'm going to use a value like -0.5 and 0.1 for now. We can change this value later on the material, but I think those are going to be a nice starting point. Let's put the X and Y input here onto the speed. Now, we're going to duplicate the spanner here, and we're going to hook up the speed to the speed and our texture coordinates with the correct reference to the UV channel. So this means that we want the reference Snow Noise 2 to go into the texture Snow Noise 2 and the 1 to the 1, right? We're going to put this here on the UV, and we're going to put this here on the UV. Now if I click here and I search for noise, you can see here that my textures are going to be panning, right? And that's great. That's exactly what we wanted. All right, great. Now on to the next step. I just did some graph organization here, and I also set my textures, my noise textures, to some noise textures that I had previously. These ones are ones that I found that worked really well. You can make your own noise textures or experiment with the noise textures that you currently have. We're going to blend those two noises together. To do this, we're simply going to multiply them by each other, but there's a problem here, and that is that when you multiply things together, due to the nature of multiplication, usually the lower values, they get stronger in the final result. What I mean by this is, well, if you multiply anything by 0.5, it's always going to be half of the original. But if you multiply anything by 1, it's always going to be itself. Unless you have values that surpass 1, you don't have a built-in mathematical mechanism to raise up the values from their original. But you do have mathematical mechanisms to bring down the average number. After all, anything below 1 is going to yield a result that is lesser than the original. To counteract this, what we can do is that after we multiply both noises together, we can create a new float. This can be a constant, and we can multiply it by 2. So we raise up the brightness of the overall values here by multiplying it by 2. And you can see here now that these values, if I compare it to the previous result, you can see here how it got a little bit brightened, right, with the before and after. So this is the noise that's going to drive the whole effect. What I'm going to do here is that if I just plug this into the color and into the alpha as well, and let's make a material out of it really quickly. So tutorial snow, create, let's create a new material here. And if I put this in my plane, you're going to notice that even though we have these interesting shapes, they don't really look stretched like this one, right? Of course, there's still a lot of things we got to do in the tutorial, but to get the stretchiness, you can see here on the texture samples themselves, I'm actually manipulating these values. So this is what gives that stretched look. So if I go here, I can mimic these values. So this one is 0.8 and 3, so we can do it here. And this one is 0.3 and 1. Now you can see that even though it doesn't look fully perfect yet, it looks a lot closer, especially on the shapes, right? Sometimes it's just about messing with the tiling of your materials, of your noises, right? And that will get you closer to the intended look. Let's go back to the shader though. What we're going to do here is that we're going to manipulate the vertex position to raise the actual geometry based on this noise. To do that, we're going to get a node called creatively vertex position. What we're going going to do here is that we're going to manipulate the middle as-is here, which is the height as-is, the y-as-is. This means that we need to intercept, we can't just plug this in, we need to intercept it. We're going to make an append here, and we're going to say that x is equal to x, z is equal to z, and before we plug it in the y, we're going to do a little bit of a magic to the y. What we're going to do here, we are going to create a new float, and this is going to be called snow height, and we can set it as a default value of 1. Now, we're going to multiply our noise by the snow height, and we're going to add our y vertex position to this noise. So essentially, we are adding intensity to the y position of our vertices based on the intensity of these noises. So white means that it's going to be raised up, black means that it's not. Now that we have this operation, we can straight up plug this into the y result. And now, if I plug this to the vertex position, we're already going to have part of the result that we're looking for. Look, now our snow is raising up the plane, but it still doesn't look quite right. Well, this is because this is an alpha blend shader. It doesn't really work with additive shaders for other reasons that are URP specific, but there's ways for us to work around this. So the first thing we can do here is that we can replace our color, and instead of using the noise, we can create a property and we can call it snow color. In my case, I think I'm going to use a off-white, you know, almost white type of blue here. I think that's going to work great. And our alpha, we're going to keep the same for now. So if I save it, now you're already going to notice that this is looking a lot closer, right? We're getting there. We're almost there, folks. But there's still a couple of things that we need to fix. Well, first, you can see here alongside the edges that you can quite clearly see where the effect starts and where the effect ends, because the edges are not masked, they're not faded. What I'm going to do here is that I'm going to get myself a new texture sample, and we're going to call this texture sample mask. And on this mask, I have made a texture before, which is essentially a mask of a white square and the edges are feathered. So it's a very, very simple mask. And all we're going to do here is that we're going to take the result of this multiply, and just for organizational sake, I'm going to make a new multiply here. You can also move these things a little bit closer. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to multiply this mask by this result. And something else I'm going to do is that we want this effect to not intersect with geometry, so that if it goes through a cliff, for example, it looks correct. So for that, we're going to use the depth fade node. And on the vertex position, we want to take the result of our vertex position there, and on the distance we can actually promote this into a variable, so we can call this depth fade, and we can use a default value of 1, and later on we can, you know, of course change it. And now we're going to also multiply this, and the result of this multiplication is going to go into our alpha. Now if I save, you'll be able to realize that first, our terrain disappeared, but now that I got it back, we have here our shader. Now, we're probably gonna have to mess with the settings a little bit. So first and foremost, let's assemble the mask here. Square mask. All right, so we got the fade going on. The depth fade, we also need to change it here. So I was using 0.45 before, so I'm going to use this here. 0.45. And the height is also a little bit too much. So let's fix the height a little bit. This can be a little bit stronger. Interestingly, I don't really know what's up with this, with these black spots. Might be because of the edge length. No, they're not. Maybe our color is too strong. Let me see here. Interesting. I don't know what's up with these black spots. Let me check. Alrighty, folks, I found the mistake. It's actually something quite easy to fix. So depth fade, the way that it works is that it usually works on very high or very low values. So this is why we're getting these very bright whites that generate bloom, and these very low blacks that completely black out the effect. What you can do is that you need to essentially clamp them to be from 0 to 1, and a very efficient way of doing that is by saturating something. using the node Saturate. But Depth Fade itself has a little checkbox here that you can check called Saturate. So if we check that box and click on Save Changes, but as you can see, here we have it. We have our effect. It is ready to go. The, swirly snow. You can change the noises. You can play with the parameters. You can change the color. This is really good looking effect. One last pro tip is that you can mess with the edge length and increase it until you find that it starts looking bad, because the edge length can be a little bit expensive. If you are on a PC, it's not a big deal, but on mobile, it's definitely a concern. But, if you are on PC, I wouldn't even worry about it. But as you can see here, you can kind of play around with the values until it starts looking bad, and that's going to be more optimized. So yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe. And if you liked this tutorial, there's plenty more where that comes from, and many more to come. To stay up to date on what me and William are up to, you can check out our Discord server. You can also ask questions, showcase your stuff. We also update everyone on our asset store deals. You can showcase your art, your game, anything goes. So it's just we're trying to build a little game dev community there. So you're more than welcome to join. The link is going to be in the description below. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.